You're listening to Brainbusta Radio.
Hi everyone, it's the Queen of NE, and you're listening to Wrestling Reverb right here on Brainbusta Radio, where you can also find me on Queen's Court every Wednesday.
Hey yo, Josh, let me get a little bit of reverb. Yeah. J. Will. Yeah, I'm about that lifestyle. I talk green work, repping it all over. It's right on the t-shirt. Fan for a lifetime. Yeah, that's a long pass. Figure I would show some love right on the podcast. Turn this up loud and make sure you don't do nothing else. Cause if you're listening to us, then you're improving your health. My name is J. Will. Welcome to the show, yeah. Wrestle, flow, 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 yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to a very special edition of Wrestling Reverb. I am your host Josh. Kevin is here today. How are you doing today, Kevin?
I'm good. I've been busy, but I'm ready now to sit down and do this show. We have a very special show in line this evening, or whenever you're listening to this, morning, evening, or night.
Yeah, we do have a very special show. We're not going to waste any more of your precious time. We're going to interview this very special guest. It is tradition around here to let our guests kind of introduce themselves to our lovely listeners. Who have we got on the line today?
Well, Kevin, Josh, my name's Chris Van Vliet. If you've ever watched a wrestling interview on YouTube, I'm probably the guy who was doing that interview. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course.
Absolutely.
We are very excited to have you here. We're just briefly chatting in our little pre-chat and talking about how it's a pretty interesting time within the business now. It is a pretty cool time to be watching wrestling. There's a lot of good and bad going on within multiple different companies, and today is going to be that. We're going to chat with Chris about his thoughts on everything that's going on within wrestling because, hey, Chris, you can confirm this. You're a fan of the business, obviously.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan, lifelong fan, just like you guys, like anyone else who's listening to this. And I'm with you. I think this is an exciting time. I was just having a conversation with Justin Roberts, the ring announcer for AEW, and I did an interview with him that'll be uploaded really soon. And I said that basically, we're in a time here, how we look at, time in history classes, like BC and AD,
yeah,
before Christ. Yeah, and I think that's where we're at right now. We're going to look at wrestling as pre-AEW and then post-AEW, because I really think that, for better or worse, this is really going to shake things up.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a lot, but of course we would be remiss in not asking you, you being a fan, you said a lifelong fan, where did this all kind of begin for you? I know it's a question that everybody asks, but I'm going to ask the cliche question, where did it all begin for one Chris?
And it's an important question to ask because, we all have this in common as wrestling fans, but it's interesting to know, what was your first, when did you first discover it? What was your first exposure to it? And I think that connects us even more. So I'm 35. So when I was a kid, 5, 6 years old, I remember watching at my grandfather's house, and seeing the larger than life stars and Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man Randy Savage. But it wasn't until the Attitude Era. So I would have been 15, 16 years old, 98, 99. That's when I really got into it. And it was interesting because I was a high school wrestler. I was an amateur wrestler, and you're not supposed to like pro wrestling because that stuff's fake.
Large difference.
Yeah, so I was an amateur wrestler, and I had a couple of friends who were really into WWE, and I'm like, come on, or WWF at the time, and I'm like, come on, guys. And I had this one buddy of mine, we talked on the phone every Monday, and then at 9 o'clock, he's like, I'm sorry, I got to get off the phone. Raw's about to start. And I'm like, that's so ridiculous, man. This is so stupid. And then I started watching it. And I remembered why I loved it as a kid. And it drew me right in. This was the time of The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. The storylines with Vince McMahon. I was a huge Triple H fan. I had a Triple H poster on my wall. And I kind of decided at that time I was going to be a pro wrestler for a living. Like that was going to be my dream.
Hell yeah.
And I was a backyard wrestler from there, which I do not recommend to anybody. I started with me giving rock bottoms and stunners to my friends on the trampoline. And then we made a whole league out of wrestling on like mats in my buddy Greg's backyard. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And this is just like an addiction, as you know, that's never, ever going to go away.
Yeah, it's an itch.
Yeah, it is. It's an itch, and it can be a bad itch. It can be a good itch. There's a little bit of a background on us, Chris. So I've been watching. I'm 23. I'm a little baby. So is Kevin. We're both babies. But I've been watching wrestling since my first memories of wrestling. Really, I've been watching wrestling since I was 4 or 5 years old. So I've been watching wrestling for a long time as well.
So like the same amount of time as me, really?
Yeah, so I got in basically just as the Attitude Era was coming kind of to an end. Around 2000, 2001 is when I got into it. But okay. Kevin's a little bit different. Kevin, you can kind of explain when you started watching.
Yeah, so I didn't start watching wrestling until I was about 9-10 years old, 2006. The first memories I have, I can actually pinpoint the very first match I ever watched. And I was sort of like this, where I had friends that watched it, and they would always be like, yo, you should come over and you should watch wrestling and we should do this and that. And I'm like, I don't see the appeal. And then one week I finally gave in, and I went over to my buddy's house, and we watched SmackDown. And the first match I ever watched was Rey Mysterio versus Elijah Burke.
Okay.
And I grew to love one of the people in that match, and it wasn't Elijah Burke.
What a shame.
Rey Mysterio. And ever since then, yeah, it's like you said, it's an addiction, man. It's something that you latch onto and you ride it for whatever it's worth. And I've been riding this bandwagon for 13 years now, and I love it.
No, I hear you, and it's funny because when you're in it. Like if you're a wrestling fan, you're a crazy wrestling fan. There's very few people that are, have one foot in. You're either a crazy fan or you go, oh yeah, I used to watch that when I was a kid. It's like it's one or the other.
Yeah, there's no real in between. We talk about. When I say the word casual fan to you, Chris, what kind of comes in your mind is what is a casual fan of wrestling?
That's an interesting question because, like we just said, I think that you're either a hardcore fan or you're not. So I think if you're a casual fan, you're the person who, goes to Raw when it's in town, or you go to a house show if it's in town, and you're aware of who the people are. But if I asked you who the current Intercontinental Champion is, you'd have no idea. Or if I asked you, is AJ Styles on Raw or SmackDown, you wouldn't know. I think that's what a casual fan is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Kevin, when you hear casual fan, do you kind of agree with Chris? Or is there a difference? Is there really a casual fan in this time? Because, again, like Chris said, like we said, it's very much you're in it or you're not.
There's very much a casual fan still in today's wrestling landscape. I agree with Chris a lot with what he said, where, you ask him the finer points of wrestling, you ask him who's where and who's holding what title, they may not know. But I like to think of them as like Wrestlemania fans, where they come out of the woodwork for the big shows. I know I have plenty of friends that will watch the Rumble with me, they'll watch WrestleMania with me, and then for the rest of the year, they can't be bothered. Yeah. When I think of casual fans, I think about big show fans. Not fans of the big show. Fans of the biggest shows in professional wrestling.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, Chris, you obviously, for people that don't know your journey, or even if they're not completely aware of who you are, which you're stupid if you don't, because you're a fantastic interviewer, by the way. Not going to fangirl too hard over here, but you are very good at what you do.
Thank you.
But where did that all start for you? Did you always have that within you, even in school maybe, or was it more so when you got older, when you go, I want to interview people? Was it something that just fell into your lap? What kind of happened? How did you get started?
I think the thing that a lot of people don't realize when they only see my videos on YouTube is I'm a professional broadcaster, if you will. Like I host a TV show. That's my day job. I host an Entertainment Tonight type of show in Miami called Deco Drive. I've been on TV for 15 years, and the YouTube thing kind of grew out of that in the most random and best way. I was doing interviews as part of my job. I interview a lot of celebrities, a lot of movie stars, a lot of artists. I interview a lot of people for my job. I go to red carpet events. And when I was working in Cleveland, we would have wrestlers come to town. I was in Cleveland like 5 years ago, and I lived there for 5 years. So we're talking from 2010 to about 2015, the start of 2015. Yeah. When wrestlers would come into town to promote Raw or SmackDown or pay-per-view, I would get an interview with some people as they'd come to town. I interviewed Jack Swagger, Alberto Del Rio, Dolph Ziggler, The Miz. And we would do like a 20, 30 second or 20, 30 minute interview, but we'd only air like 20 or 30 seconds on TV. Yeah. And I'm going, well, I'm a massive wrestling fan. I asked them a whole bunch of questions that I really like and I want to know the answers to. I'm sure there's other fans out there that would want to know the answers too. So we'd air just that little bit, the 20, 30 seconds on TV, and then I'd post the remaining interview, the Raw interview, online on my YouTube channel, which had like 4 subscribers at the time. And I just figured it's out there. If someone else wants to, see this and look at it, then that's great. It's out there for them to see. And it was an interview I did with The Miz. He was about to throw the first pitch out for the Cleveland Indians game. And it was right after CM Punk's pipe bomb. And I just asked him about the pipe bomb in general. And he gave me this interesting answer saying it was the most exciting time to be a wrestling fan since the Attitude Era. And somehow someone found this interview, the needle in the haystack in YouTube. And I woke up the next day and there were 6,000 views on this video. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. That's never happened to me before. And then I went to bed that night and woke up the next day and there was 36,000 views. And I'm like, oh my God, whoa. I can't even believe this. And that's when I just kind of started to realize that anytime a wrestler was in town, I was going to do an interview and I was going to post it. And hopefully someone would find something interesting about it and share it and like it and watch it. And in the last maybe year or two, I've really started to go out of my way to do more interviews. And if you've seen any of my interviews, I kind of recap them at the end. And like sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, like the Tony Khan interview. Oh yeah, I drove 11 hours round trip to get this interview. Or like I was just in Detroit on Monday because Rhino called me personally and asked if I would do an interview. And I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, flew 3 hours to Detroit, Michigan, did the interview with Rhino. Then Rhino was kind enough to drive me to Zach Gowen's house where I did another interview and did those 2 interviews, went straight to the airport and flew 3 hours home. So like I've been putting in a lot of effort and a lot of work because I know that the more effort and work that I put in, the more people will appreciate it and the more people will hopefully end up seeing this.
Yeah, you could tell your passion and your drive shines through in your work.
Yeah.
And your interviews are fantastic, top notch. Like Josh said, not going to fangirl too much.
But thank you guys. That means a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a fellow fan, so hearing that from you guys, that means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome work. I'm just wondering, of all the interviews you've done, what are some of the best memories that you could sort of think of? What comes to mind when I ask you about your wrestling interviews? Who stands out?
Well, The Rock was at the top of my list just as an interviewer in general, wrestling or otherwise, that I wanted to interview. And I was so incredibly lucky that my first interview with The Rock was in a wrestling setting. It was backstage at Raw in Cleveland at the beginning of 2012. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. Like most of the times when you do these celebrity interviews, there are publicists standing around. You've got like a really tight window of time. And, when WWE said, hey, we've got an interview for you in Cleveland. We don't know who it is with, who it's going to be with yet, but, just know that you're going to do it. And then the day before, they reached out and said, all right, you ready for this? Your interview's with The Rock. And I'm like, oh my God. Talk about fangirling. I was so freaking excited. So The Rock's at the top of my list, and I've interviewed him 9 times. And it just, it gets better every single time. Like I saw him on a red carpet recently, and as soon as he saw me, he's like, Chris, what's going on, man? How you been? It's like, if I could go back in time and tell the 16-year-old version of myself who was raising the people's eyebrow and telling people it didn't matter, that The Rock would know my name. Like, that would just blow little Chris's mind. You know, that wouldn't make any sense to him.
Yeah, and I think that's what I see. You know, anybody can essentially have a microphone and try to interview someone, essentially.
Sure.
But what I like about your work and your interviews, even with movie stars and musicians and stuff, I can see that you, A, have done your research on them, which is really important that people don't think about. I mean, I certainly didn't think about it before I started even podcasting, you know, on a smaller scale, but I mean, I didn't think about it. And then also I can see that you're genuinely enjoying what you're doing. So, I mean, that's really important, is to, I hate to sound cliche and cheesy, but it is to have fun with what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, me actually being on TV has gotten me comfortable on camera, which is a really big thing. Like, and you guys know this from podcasting. The first, 200 times you hear your own voice back, you're like, I don't know. No, come on. I don't really sound like that, do I?
Yeah.
And yeah, the reality is you do sound like that. It just, you don't realize that you sound like that. And obviously when you see yourself on video, it's, you know, it's that times 10. Like, you're like, oh my God, do I really do that thing with my eyebrows? What am I doing with my hands right now?
We're our own worst critics.
Absolutely. And I think for good reason, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing is, most of us aren't self-aware enough to realize that all those things you're doing or you're hearing, that's just you being you. You just have this idea in your head of who you think you are. And when you see or hear yourself, you know, it's a little bit different. So for me, having that experience on television has helped a lot, you know, helped me just to be comfortable. And, you know, the comment I see on my YouTube interviews so often is, I can't believe you actually let them talk. Like, thank you for letting them talk. And I'm thinking, nobody is clicking on one of my interviews to hear me talk. So, they might like the questions I ask, but nobody's clicking on a Chris Van Vliet video to hear Chris Van Vliet talking. They're there to see the guest, and I'm so completely aware of that. So I ask a question and I shut up and not just let them talk, but I listen too. And I think that's a really key thing for anyone who wants to do an interview, is listen to what your guest is saying and don't just be thinking about what your next question is going to be. Actually listen and engage. It's a conversation. It's not an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, that way when you're listening to what they have to say, instead of having your next question in mind and sort of deterring them from the path they're on, you could go down that path with them and just have a much more free-flowing conversation than you would have otherwise if you just went question, answer, question, answer, question, answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think that there's a lot of that's a big rookie mistake I think a lot of interviewers make, is not hearing what's being said, and they missed a little gem there, a little nugget that they could have pulled out and got even more information out of it. Instead, they were so focused on what was next and just moved on.
Yeah, I agree completely. Listen, no matter who you're interviewing, as much as you want to fangirl over anybody, we're still all people. We're all just having a chat, essentially, about what we all love. So I was watching the other day, I was binge watching some nice Chris Van Vliet interviews, and
okay.
And I was sitting up, had my snack, I was all ready to go, and then I was watching some of your recent interviews as opposed to some of your older interviews, and just trying to pay attention, because, like you said, it is sometimes hard you want to listen to what the person being interviewed is saying, but I tried to watch it in a different way and go, hey, what's Chris doing here? Because, again,
sure,
you're clicking on whoever, and like, okay. So I watched some of your recent ones, like Gail Kim and Vicky Guerrero, which I think the Gail Kim interview that I watched the other day, by the way, like, a lot of people are so, like, you hear the name Gail Kim now on Twitter and everyone's like, oh my God, she's so opinionated and stuff. You do things when you ask questions in such a, I can't even describe it, how you don't just ask, like, how do you feel about some people, the way they speak about you on Twitter? Like, you're actually engaging Gail in this point in a conversation, and it goes for 30 minutes, and you're just having a chat. And I don't think, as opposed to whoever, not a lot of people just have a conversation because, you know, time, and understand you got to move things along, but just the way you approach any situation is just I know there's something to be said about that, especially in the instance of so many people who are just, not me included, but so many people are just, you hear someone like Gail Kim and they're just, I'm angry at her because she says this thing. But the way you did it was very like, I don't know, you just did it with grace, I should say. How do you go about doing those kind of interviews with someone who you know a lot of people are going to have an opinion on?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's it's very kind of you to say. Gail is so incredibly nice.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, the story that I told at the start of that interview, where I watched her debut match when she was wearing a lucha mask and wrestling under the name of La Felina, like that really connected us. I feel like, I was a 17-year-old kid sitting in this dank bar in Toronto watching her wrestle, and like me bringing up that memory, I think really connected with her on a personal level. But it's funny. I didn't go into that interview thinking like Gail Kim's going to be difficult to talk to or people aren't going to like this. I was just like, I'm genuinely interested. And I think if you can come to any of these interviews from a place of curiosity, I think that's going to help. I think that someone who's more difficult to have an interview with, and I've done several with him, is Bully Ray, or whatever we're calling him, Bubba Ray, whatever we want to call him these days. But he's just like an abrasive, kind of an asshole of a guy. It's just, he lives the gimmick, and that's nothing against him. It's just like, if he doesn't like the way you phrase a question, he's going to make fun of you, and he's going to give you a bad answer because of it. So those are the type of situations where I go into it and I'm like, all right, if I wasn't already going to bring my A game, which I try to do all the time, like I definitely have to step it up with someone like him.
Yeah. I just really do think that you approach things in such a, I don't know, it should be the common way to approach an interview, what you're saying, but it doesn't always work that way.
Well, look, I always think of it like this. If you were at a birthday party or a cocktail party and you were having a conversation with someone, you wouldn't just like sit there and pepper them with questions. No. You would have a conversation with them. You would lead them into topics, and your conversation would just flow. And I think that too many people go, all right, I'm going to sit down with so-and-so, and I'm going to specifically ask them this because it'll be a great title for a video. Yeah. And it's like I've never gone into any of my interviews like that. I've just gone into them going, all right, here's a list of 10, 12, 15 topics I'd like to cover. And, I have them written out on like a little card or a little like piece of paper. And I haven't written them in any specific order. So if question 1 that I've written down happens to lead into question 8, we just go there, you know, and that's just the way that it flows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I had the same experience. I did some interviews for my school television show when I was in college, and I always did the same thing for prep. I would do an opening and a closing, and I'd fill in the middle with some ideas, but I wouldn't come up with questions necessarily because I wanted to hear what they had to say. And when I hear what they have to say, that's where I go from there, and it just makes it sound so less stilted.
Yeah, definitely. And look, we're all living in an era now where, and you guys have proven it, you can have a podcast and you can, have these interesting conversations and interviews. We're no longer beholden to having to be on like a TV network. It's cool that we can kind of all create our own content for ourselves.
Yeah, when 20 years ago, this wouldn't have been really possible. When you think about the world that we kind of are in at the moment with content really at our fingertips in every way, shape or form, do you think that's 100% the way we should be leading into, or do you think there still should be that divide between TV networks or whatever and online content?
I think the best and worst thing about the era we're living in now is everybody can have a podcast, everybody can have a YouTube channel, and so on and so on. That's the best and worst thing. The best thing is everyone can have a podcast. The worst thing is everyone can have a podcast, and how is yours going to stand out? And the good thing about that is yours stands out by being, it'll stand out by being good. It'll stand out by being different. It'll stand out by being interesting. And I think now there's no longer the gatekeepers of television networks to say you're not good enough or you are good enough, to be on our channel. I've been in broadcasting for 15 years, like I mentioned, and I am for sure the last generation of, quote unquote traditional broadcasters. There's no way that I'll be able to continue to have a television career for the next 30 years. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that things are changing. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't turned on my TV other than to watch wrestling. I haven't turned on my TV when I'm not watching like Netflix or Hulu in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I couldn't even tell you the last time I watched television, that wasn't like a Netflix or Hulu or something like that. So it's a great time because we can create our own content and then let the people decide whether it's good enough or not.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What's your favorite? What are you watching on Netflix at the moment? What are you recommending to everybody?
I can't wait for Ozark to come back. So that was like, I don't watch a ton of shows just because I feel like I can't just sit down and just binge a show. I feel like I should be doing like more productive things. But
You're a
Ozark
busy man
has me.
flying
Ozark's a good
to
one.
Detroit at 4:30 in the morning. So.
Yeah, I think last week I was the last week and a half I went from San Francisco for one day to New York for one day, overnight to London for 2 days. Then I flew back here. I was home for a couple days. Then I went to Arizona for 2 days. Then straight to Detroit home for like a couple hours and then to Detroit. So it's been pretty busy. Yeah.
When do you sleep? I guess that's my next question. When does Chris Van
I've
Vliet
gotten
sleep?
really good at sleeping on planes. Yeah. But look, I just like to be busy. You know, I think that we only have one life, and I think that it's completely in our control whether that life's going to be a good life, a great life, or otherwise. And the more things that I can do that I'm passionate about, that I love, that make every day exciting, I think that makes a better life every single day.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. Before me and Kevin were chatting before you joined the call, Chris, and we were talking about how there seems in right now, especially with WWE, there's always going to be complaining, I guess, to put it nicely, within especially the WWE product, especially when we live in an internet age. So there's always going to be complaining.
The people will never be satisfied.
No, not at all. When you look at WWE at the moment, there's a lot of people saying it isn't really, and myself included, I'm a very positive person, especially when it comes to WWE. I'm very much on the journey and I'm for it. But it feels like since Mania, first and foremost, Chris, how did you enjoy WrestleMania?
Oh, I enjoyed WrestleMania a lot. I was there. It's my 9th WrestleMania that I've been to. I've been to something like the last, 7 in a row or something like that.
Heck.
Yeah, 7 in a row. I love it, and it's become a tradition for me. And it was, I think, one of the more enjoyable WrestleManias over the last couple of years. I don't know if I loved that everything we thought was going to happen and everyone who we thought was going to won. It
was very feel good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But the fans left happy. And I think that's an important thing. I haven't watched it back, so I don't know how it played out on TV. I don't really know how different the experience was for people watching it at home. But I'll say, as a fan sitting there in the middle of MetLife Stadium, it was fun. It was enjoyable. It's way too long, but but it's enjoyable.
Yes.
Yeah, WrestleMania was... Usually with WrestleMania, I think, people often say this, WrestleMania is a roller coaster. It is always a roller coaster, but in this instant, it wasn't so much of a twisty-turny roller coaster. It was just kind of we know where we're going, this is what you're getting, and smile, I guess is the way. But I think the thing with that and the backlash against this year's WrestleMania is that it was good and it felt good, but now there's nothing to really sink our teeth into. Everyone's got their win. Becky, Kofi, Rollins, everybody has got their win. If speaking with someone like you who was at WrestleMania and you probably felt that energy of all those moments, where do you go now? Because there's no chase anymore. Everyone's got what they want.
Yeah, I thought about that as I left WrestleMania too. I thought about everything that we thought was going to happen happened. And it's like, all right, well, now we restart, I guess. Like, I thought it was pretty exciting leaving the Rumble, heading into the road to WrestleMania. And now it's like, all right, well, I guess, Money in the Bank is going to reset things. Yeah. And that's kind of cool that they have these benchmarks along the way. So I guess Money in the Bank's going to reset things, and then we'll have some storylines leading into SummerSlam, or maybe even before that. So I guess that's where we go. I was pretty thrown off, as I'm sure you guys were, that the Superstars shakeup is not really a thing. Like, I guess we don't really have separate brands anymore. Like, it's
the beginning of the end of it, I think. I think me and Kevin were actually talking about this. Kevin, we were chatting about this quote-unquote wild card rule. Kevin, I'll let you chime in first. Chris, feel free to chime in after as well. But do you think that the brand split should just be... I want it to stay. I personally think it's better for more talent. There's more opportunities, but there shouldn't be a middle ground. It either is or it isn't. Kevin, what's your kind of thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that 100%. I hate the fact that they've put themselves in a spot where they can't choose between having a brand split and not having one. They decided to play it 50-50, and I think that's for the detriment of everyone involved, because now you have people running amok. You don't know who's where. You don't know what you don't know what side is up, what's going on anymore. And I think that's hurting the program, and amongst other things that are hurting the program, I think. But I really think that they need to make a decision. They need to make a call and stick to it. Either you have separate shows, separate rosters, separate brands, or you don't. You can't play the middle because you're not getting support on either side.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Chris, what do you think about that? Because, I mean, it seems to be, I hate the internet concept that we're in, but it does seem to be fairly negative.
Yeah, Kevin, you nailed it. And I was never a fan of, like, they have the brand split, and then 3 weeks later they'd be like, what's he doing here? He's a SmackDown star. And it's like, yeah, but come on. We know we know that anyone can go anywhere they want. And then it'd be like, oh, John Cena, he's a free agent. He can show up on Raw or SmackDown anytime he wants. It's just like, well, what's the point of having the brand split then? Like, yeah. If you're going to have a brand split, if you're going to say this guy's a Raw guy and this guy's a SmackDown guy, I can't imagine if in sports they were like, all right, well, this guy plays for the Blue Jays, but all of a sudden he's on the Yankees today. Like, it just doesn't make sense. If they're supposed to be competing against each other, they can't just be like interchanging all the time. So I agree with you, Kevin. I think this is the beginning of the end of the brand split. I think it needs to be. I think that if superstars show up on Raw sometimes, show up on SmackDown sometimes, I think that's completely fine. Give us one belt. Give us one championship for the men. Give us one championship for the women. Sure. And then we go from there. And I get why they have the brand split. I understand why. Like, they have too many people and not enough spots for it. They only have 5 hours of television to showcase I don't know how many talent they have, 100 or plus, more. And that's not a bad thing. They have a lot of talent. They just don't have enough spaces for them all. So I just think that if they're going to have a brand split, make it a brand split, and that's that, and make it official. If they're not going to have a brand split, then just keep doing what they're doing with guys showing up whenever, wherever.
Yeah, I agree. You brought up championships as well. I think that's the problem, not just... it is a problem in WWE, but this is just wrestling in general. Do you think there's too many quote-unquote championships in a very... when you think that there is a lot of talent, but it is still a small space, there's only so many spots on top, do you think there's way too many titles? Chris, I'll start with you.
Well, I feel like they've actually gotten rid of some titles. Like, when I was growing up, there was the hardcore title and there was the European title. There was a cruiserweight title at some point in time there.
Oh, yeah.
I guess, so I feel like, no, I don't know if there's too many titles, but having two main titles is a confusing thing. Because to say to someone, yeah, that guy's the world champion, but he's only the world champion on Monday nights. It's like, well, is he the world champion or not? Like, is he your top guy or not? So I think that I'm okay with the other belts. I know we're not supposed to call them belts. I know.
Well, are we now? Becky calls them belts. Are we allowed to call them belts?
You're right. That's a good point. I remember saying that to Daniel Bryan. He's like, It's not a belt. Belts hold up pants. I'm like,
That's right.
Yeah, okay, all right, good point.
Well, there's your answer.
And by the way, since Daniel Bryan is a champion again, is he going to have the eco-friendly tag titles now?
He's got to.
I hope so. Did you
Yeah,
happen
that
to
was so
see
brilliant.
that promo he cut on the .com exclusive of him and Rowan? I think we forget. Me and Kevin were actually talking about this before, Chris, is that I think the time away with Bryan, I know it's been a year since he's come back, but I think we took him for granted of what's in the ring and what he can do, because Bryan is incredible.
Yeah, Bryan's pretty amazing, and I think this new Daniel Bryan, I didn't mean to say that, but the new Daniel Bryan, this heel Daniel Bryan, is so much more entertaining than anything we've seen before. Yeah, big fan of what he's doing, and he's really changing the game. And I was hoping this was going to lead up to a Daniel Bryan Miz championship, with Miz finally going over again, because I think he's incredibly deserving of it. But maybe that's something that'll happen down the line.
It's always there, I guess. Kevin, we talk about WWE and, their kind of stuff that's going on, and we did allude to the fact there is a bit of a change in the business that's coming up. Double or Nothing is at the end of the month. It's coming up faster than we can even think about it. It feels like yesterday we were just, they were just announcing it. Yeah. Kevin, AEW, Double or Nothing. Are you excited, and where does this lead?
I am excited, Josh. I'm excited because I think wrestling needs this. I think wrestling needs AEW to be big, because that just pushes the market and makes everyone else need to be better as a result. I think that the match card they're putting together is tremendous. I think we're getting to see matches that we've wanted to see for a long time. Young Bucks and Lucha Bros. Jericho Omega Part 2, the first part was so fantastic. I really think that this could be, and I think Chris alluded to this at the very top of the program, maybe this is before in the pre-chat, I'm not even sure at this point, but I think that this could be the dawning of a new era in wrestling.
Yeah. Chris is someone who is, you've interviewed stars that are going to be a part of Double or Nothing, and what's your take on it? Are you... Obviously, you sound excited for it, and you were kind of alluding to the fact that it's going to be post-AEW, pre-AEW, but initially, what did you think? When you first heard about AEW, as an interviewer going, oh, yeah, I get some cool interviews leading into this show, but as a fan, what are you kind of feeling?
As a fan, I'm excited, because I know who's behind this. And the Khan family has more money than the McMahons, which is crazy to think about. Yeah. Like, Tony Khan's father has $7.4 billion and is one of the richest people in the world. So the fact that they have that behind them, and this isn't just about money, because then I know you can start to get into a discussion about, like, well, Ted Turner had a lot of money too. Yeah, Ted Turner did have a lot of money, but Ted Turner was not a wrestling fan. No. Tony Khan is a bigger wrestling fan than all three of us put together. Yeah. And the fact that that's the guy who's going to be bankrolling this, that's the guy who's making a lot of the decisions, I think is a really exciting thing for wrestling. And I hope that Double or Nothing is going to be good. I expect Double or Nothing to be good. I just think we need to temper our expectations. We need to realize that this is a brand new company, and sure, it's going to be exciting. Sure, it's going to be awesome. But we just need to realize that if something doesn't go exactly how we want it to go in the first month or 2 or 5, we just need to go, that's okay. They're doing 80% of the things right, or 90% of the things right. And a couple things that, you don't love, they can work on. And there's going to be bumps in the road. I think that everyone's expecting, like, the heavens to open up and, like, God himself to point at AEW and be like, this is going to be awesome. Like, go do your thing. I think it's, there's going to be bumps in the road. And I think that we just need to go into this and understand that it's not going to be this perfect alternative. It's going to be an alternative. It's going to be a incredibly exciting alternative. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what their product looks like.
Me too, tenfold. And, you brought up Ted Turner, and, there's always going to be the comparison of WCW. Everyone's going to be like, it could be another time like this. They're on Turner's network, or they're potentially going to be on Turner's network, and whatever other factor that comes into it. Do you initially, I mean, it's probably hard not to, but do you initially go, this is going to be like WCW, or do you just not even think about WCW?
I don't think it's going to be anything like WCW. Like in the interview that I had with Tony Khan, he's really focused on like wins and losses mattering, and like actually having like true number one contenders. And Tony's a numbers guy. It's actually his job for the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're unaware, that's the football team that his family owns. Yeah, his family owns an NFL team, which is crazy to think about. So he's really big on numbers, and I think that he wants to make this actually matter. Like wins and losses will matter here, which I think is going to be a really interesting thing, because it's the concept we've never seen before in pro wrestling.
Never. It kind of feels like in my personal opinion, it seems like it's being approached as more of a sport than a television show. In my opinion, it's being approached a little bit more. Kevin, I think we've had a conversation a couple of times, but do you see it more of as a true sport, maybe, or a sporting intention, or do you see it still as it's just a pro wrestling is different? What do you kind of feel from that?
Well, pro wrestling is always. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, you go ahead. Yeah, no, you're right.
I mean, pro wrestling's always going to be a little bit different than pro sport, and I think that's something they should embrace. I don't think it's a bad thing. I know that one of the rumors going around with the WWE and Fox is that Fox wants it to be more of a sports-like presentation. I don't necessarily think that the WWE or the AEW needs to lean into that sport-first mentality. I actually kind of like the intricacies and the things that make pro wrestling so larger than life and so different than sports. I think that's what makes wrestling fun.
Yeah, Chris,
I think that anything right now with AEW is purely speculation.
Yeah,
and
very much so.
I think that what Tony's kind of saying with this wins and losses thing would be like, can you imagine someone trying to describe Lucha Underground before it debuted?
Oh man,
and I feel like that's what we're kind of doing here. Like if we were to sit down with Robert Rodriguez, who owns the El Rey Network, and he were to say, so we're going to have this wrestling show, but it's not really going to matter what happens in the ring. There's going to be more backstage stuff, and it's going to exist in this, world that's not like a little bit it's otherworldly. We'd be like, what? And we'd speculate, we'd make up all these stories, and we wouldn't really understand what it was. And I think that that's kind of where we're at with AEW right now. We can all guess, and it's super fun to guess and speculate, but we're not going to know until May 25th. And what really is going to be important here for AEW to succeed or not succeed is it needs to look professional. And nothing against Ring of Honor, but when you turn, if you're flicking the channels and you went from WWE to Ring of Honor, like you see a huge difference in the production value. And it just looks different. It sounds different. It's lit different. And I think that if AEW can bring that high quality television product, and they should be able to, I think that, they'll have a real chance to succeed. And I don't know if it's about stealing eyeballs away from WWE. I think it's just about going out there and putting out a great product. Yeah, I think that, I heard this great phrase, and it's so applicable here. There's two ways to have the tallest building. You can either tear down all the other buildings, or you can just build a better building. And I think that if AEW goes out and just builds a better building and doesn't really concern themselves with what WWE is doing and just has a better product, I think they're just going to win fans over.
Yeah, very, very true. It is all speculation at this point. We don't know the product that we're going to get. And I think that's it's a pro and a con in some people's minds, because some people are going to speculate and then be let down, and other people are just going to be like, I don't know, I'm just going to watch it for what is on my screen. That's how I try to approach, really any kind of television show or any movie. You just watch what's happening. Chris, do you think this could lead to some form, in some way, shape, or form, some more of a reinvented boom period in wrestling?
Well, I think that it's kind of already started that. If you are a wrestling fan, I think that it's certainly difficult to get new wrestling fans at this point, but having two high-quality products out there is going to push both of them to be better and better every single week. So I can't see how that wouldn't, get more fans coming out of that.
Very, very true. We've got Chris here, of course. Kevin, we've been very excited to chat with you, Chris, on the side. We've just been very, very excited just to pick your brain, I guess. And sometimes the best way to do that is, hey, again, I'm just going to be Mr. Cliche today. Let's play a little word association. We'll give you a word in wrestling, and you give me the first thing that comes to your brain. I'll do a few. Kevin can do a few. When you hear the word Vince McMahon, what's the first thing that comes to your brain?
Every time I hear or whenever I hear Vince McMahon, I just you're fired. It's the only thing I think of.
Perfect.
Or just like someone. Yeah. I do that a lot in my daily life. Actually,
that was actually really good.
Yeah.
Wow, Vince, is that you, Vince?
Everyone has a Vince voice, don't they?
Oh, yeah, I'm Australian, so it's hard. It's hard to get there.
I know Australians do great American accents, though.
Oh, that's debatable. Mine's pretty.
Josh, I've never heard your American accent. Now I kind of like.
Now we got to hear it, Josh.
All right, let me see if I can. Oh, my problem is they just go southern. Let's see if I can do
this.
That's
an American accent.
Part of America.
All right, let's see if I can. I'm gonna go down to McDonald's. Is that good? That probably was crap.
Well, now, Kevin, you should try your Australian accent.
All right. Good day, Josh. Good day, Chris.
Yeah, great job. I just say talk like the Iconics, and you've got it. You've got it then.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. You just talk like the Iconics and go surfing down to the bay. You know what I'm talking about, mate?
Yeah. Great job, Chris.
No, it's like a 3 out of 10.
Alrighty, so when you
I'm from Canada. It's not my fault.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you a buy. I was talking to Kevin about how much I'm just fascinated by Canada, by the way. Toronto is like my dream city. I want to just go there and just be amongst Toronto. And there's so many great Canadians. Just we're talking to one right now, hey.
Well, you should why don't you just go to SummerSlam? You'll be there in Toronto during the summer when it's warm, and you'll be surrounded by wrestling fans.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty damn good time.
Yep, it's pretty good. I'll see you there.
Alrighty, see you there. Kevin, if you have a few kind of word association type things for Chris, go ahead.
Give me a minute to think of them. You keep going.
All right,
I'll come up with some business.
All right, when you hear the name Disco Inferno, Chris, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I just think of WCW. I don't think of like anything specific there. I just think of that's a guy. Like I was mainly a Raw guy, mainly watching Raw on Monday nights, but I would flick to Nitro during commercials, and I don't know, bad dance moves. I guess that'll be it.
Molly Holly.
Innovator. Molly Holly is one of the best female wrestlers on the face of the planet. Top 3, I think.
Yeah. Molly is my second favorite wrestler, gender aside, of all time. I love Molly Holly. Oh. Yeah.
Who's number 1?
Chris Jericho is number 1.
Okay. Yeah, he's a good guy. I'll text him and let him know.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Before Kevin goes on a few, you brought up great female workers, and obviously there's been a change in at least mainstream women's wrestling. Although I hate that term, it's just wrestling. But I hate to use this term as well. But there's been an evolution. Growing up, you grew up we watched at the same kind of time, and women certainly weren't in the same role they're in now. What is your kind of take? Did you always think that there could be more? Did you ever think we could see what we seen at WrestleMania with women main eventing?
I never thought we would see, first of all, women in the spotlight like they are in WWE, but definitely not main eventing WrestleMania. I mean, I interviewed Sasha and Bayley in January, and I said to them, do you think we'll ever see women main event at WrestleMania? Like, do you think that's even possible? And they're like, yeah. Like, I think it could happen this year. And I'm like, really? Like, oh, wow, that's cool. But when I was growing up, like, the Attitude Era was like the bra and panty matches and Miss Kitty, like, flashing the crowd and Sable coming out with the handprints on her boobs. Like, it was like, one step away from being porn, basically.
Yeah.
And, Vince walking Trish Stratus around like a dog. Like, they've come such a long way in such a short period of time. That if you told me this as a kid that I'd be seeing that, I'd be like, no, there's no way. Because when you had a women's match, like at a pay-per-view, it was like, unfortunately referred to as like the bathroom break match. Like, it'll only be like 5 minutes with entrances. I've got time to go to the bathroom. Or if you got a live show, like, I've got time to go grab another beer or a slice of pizza. I love that we are getting to a point very soon, I think, where we're no longer going to look at them as men's and women's matches. We're just going to look at them as wrestling matches.
Yeah.
I mean, and look what happened with UFC. Dana White said, we'll never have women here. That's not something we do. And now we're at a point where it doesn't matter the gender. We just look at what the best match is on a UFC card, and we don't care if it's men or women.
That is really, really true. I think society is just, in a way, and I don't mean this in a derogatory, demeaning way, but I think WWE were almost forced off their hand because society was changing. Society is in a time where women are being treated equal as they should be, and it's just predominantly happened. So I think WWE were almost in a spot where if we don't step up our game, we're going to look like... It's not going to look very good. It's just in trying to get it in a business sense. But, you've talked to many of those ladies that are in that spot, in the company now or just in wrestling in general, because it's also created a boom for women everywhere in the industry, not just WWE. So when you talk to some of those ladies, you must feel the passion that they have for the business.
Absolutely. And now they finally have a chance. Like, they finally have a chance to be like treated like, it was always one of the boys. And now it's just like one of the wrestlers. And I think that that's exciting. I actually went to wrestling school for a couple of months when I was 19 years old. And there were like 3 women in that class. And I think now that if you go to a wrestling school, there's certainly a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just exciting for young girls out there to be watching WWE programming or any sort of wrestling and seeing these strong female characters and knowing that if that's something they want to do, that's something they can do. They don't have to go out and get fake boobs or, wrestle in bra and panties. They can just be a badass worker in the ring and they can succeed.
Yeah, I agree. Kevin, have you thought of a few little tidbits to ask Chris now that you've had some time?
Yeah, I got a couple up my sleeve. All right, Chris. When you hear ruthless aggression, what do you think of?
First thing ruthless aggression. Yeah, that was another talking.
You like to think about Vince a lot, I could tell.
Yeah.
I don't know, like everything in the wrestling world just seems to come back to Vince. But no, I think of the Kurt Angle, John Cena debut match with John Cena saying "ruthless aggression." That should be what comes to anyone's mind, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
What do you think about when you hear the Tokyo Dome?
Oh, I think of New Japan, and I guess most recently I think of Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega.
Yeah. Damn, Chris Jericho is ageless, by the way.
Chris Jericho, he's incredible.
Putting on great matches in the year 2019. Has to be one of the more shocking developments in wrestling the last few years. Yeah. The guy could still go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he said something to me that was really interesting, and I didn't even really think about it in this perspective, but he's only working I think he said he only worked 6 matches in total last year. And for most wrestlers, that's like 2 weeks of work. So for Jericho to only wrestle 6 matches that were all very meaningful, that all had a build up to them, that people were invested in and cared about, that's the way to do it. That's a more interesting way to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, that is it's not something you think about, because you just see him, we're only seeing, essentially, the performers on our screen every week. So we're like, yep, they're just wrestling there, but they grind all week, and it's week after week after week. I mean, WWE's on their UK tour at the moment, so that is, like, infamously known as a grueling 2-week schedule, because you're just working. But Jericho is only working 5 or 6 matches in a year, so he can save his body for big fight feels, I guess, for lack of a better term. Kevin, have you got a few more for Chris?
Well, I got one more, and I am sort of stealing a gimmick from our good friend Mags, but who hosts the Badlands podcast, which you can catch on Brainbusta Radio every Thursday. But Chris, when I ask you about your pro wrestling Mount Rushmore, who cracks the list?
And this is interesting because I was thinking about this from one of my videos recently, because I just interviewed Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, and I said, they've got to be on everyone's Mount Rushmore. And maybe your Mount Rushmore is different from that. Well, you're wrong if it is. But it's so for me, it's Flair, Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, because of, he was the backbone of the Attitude Era. And then from there, it's tough because that fourth spot could go to, so many different people. And for me, I narrowed it down to, is it The Rock, who's, the biggest movie star in the world, but I would argue that The Rock's done more outside of wrestling now than he did in wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think that I got to go with that fourth spot. I got to give that fourth spot to The Undertaker. And The Undertaker is someone who's transcends generations. He was someone that wrestled in the early 90s through the Golden Era, and then into the Attitude Era, and then everything that has happened after that. Anyone on the street would be able to know who any 4 of those people are. And I think for me, that's a real qualifying factor to the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, it is I guess I've said this many times, and I always will stand by this. Wrestling is so subjective, and that's what I like most about it, is that it's very hard with any wrestling fan, it's very hard to agree exactly 100% the same. Because my Mount Rushmore is a little different. Mine has Hogan, mine has Stone Cold, mine has Rock, and mine has Cena. So that would be my 4. But I mean, again, for the same reasons as you, everyone knows who they are. So
yeah, and it's also, you grew up in a different era.
That's true.
You grew up in a different era where, a lot of people will make an argument for like Bruno Sammartino, and I'm like, yeah, if you're like 40 something or 50 something, yeah, I could see you making a case for that. A lot of people make a case for Andre the Giant, and I think that the same thing. If you're an older fan, sure, but I think if you walk down the street and someone on your Mount Rushmore is not recognizable to the average person, whether you're a wrestling fan or not,
you should change.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Kevin, what's yours?
Yeah.
Mine's the exact same as Josh's. It leaves no room for debate, and that's just not that much fun.
That's okay.
I would say that, and I know Josh has said this in the past too, and we actually agreed on this, is that if you were to swap a person out, I would swap The Rock for Undertaker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you have a good point where I think The Rock has done more outside the ring than inside, but he was still an integral part of the Attitude Era and is still one of the more recognizable wrestling figures in the world.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that hands down, Stone Cold was like the star of the Attitude Era.
I agree.
Were you more of a Stone Cold guy than a Rock guy, Chris?
No, I certainly related more to The Rock. I don't know. I feel like I saw a lot of myself in him, and Stone Cold was more of like, I don't know, like more like the blue collar type of guy. And I never hated my boss. I never wanted to flip off my boss. I didn't want to, scream, "Oh, hell yeah," or anything like that. I was just like, The Rock I don't know. He spoke to me, and he still is my guy.
Fair point. A lot of it's weird because you ask that question to so many people, because Stone Cold or Rock, and it's always one or the other. There's never really like middle ground of like, I lent more on the Rock side than Austin. I was always more Rock, but I was always in that time, my favorite out of, like, you know, that group, Stone Cold Rock, Undertaker, I was always Triple H. Triple H was always my dude. I always gravitated more towards the bad guys. It just was that as a kid. That probably says something about my personality, but I just always went towards more Triple H. I don't know why. I don't really see that now, but it's weird. You grow up and change. But Chris, as we're kind of winding down and then getting ready to kind of finish up here, you know, like we've said, you've talked to so many incredible people within the entertainment industry as a whole. Can you pinpoint a favorite, or is it just too hard?
I mean, I've been so incredibly fortunate to be able to do this, and I'm super grateful for the opportunities I've had. But, you know, I think The Rock is, because of what he meant to me growing up, and what he is now and what he's become now. That's such a special interview every single time. The Rock is a celebrity like no other. Even if it's a short interview, I mean, a lot of the interviews I have with The Rock now are only like 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
But he'll make you feel special in those 4 minutes. And he remembers your name. He cracks a joke. He realizes that those interactions, not just with reporters, but with fans and anyone, he realizes how important it is, and how much it means. So he makes the best of it. So I think it's, you know, if I could interview The Rock every single day for, you know, the rest of my life, I don't think I'd be upset about that.
No, you'd be crazy to. I think Rock is just he's a very personable, like, he's larger than life, and he's this big, huge star, but he also has a sense of relatability in him. I think that's important in any entertainer, is to have that relatability. You know, so I think that's why probably you feel that, and he cares. You can tell that he likes to be in these interviews and stuff like that. Well, what have you got coming up, Chris? This is your time to put yourself way over. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you guys for having me on. You're awesome. This was a great conversation.
Absolutely.
I had a blast. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. It's just my name, Chris Van Vliet, VANVLIET. I just interviewed Justin Roberts that I'll be putting up online. He had some really interesting stuff to say about why he left WWE, why he decided to come back to wrestling and join AEW. I interviewed Zach Gowen. I have some interviews coming up next weekend. D'Lo Brown and Al Snow are in town, so I'm going to be doing interviews with them.
You're looking at the real deal now.
And what does everybody want?
Head.
Yeah. And I'm flying myself to Vegas. I don't know what interviews I'm going to get there. I'm hoping to get some good ones for Double or Nothing. Yeah. But if you're listening to this and you're going to Double or Nothing, come say hi to me. It's always awesome to meet fellow wrestling fans and to be able to chat about wrestling like we did here.
Yeah. Yeah. We appreciate you 1,000 million quadrillion. Is that even a number? I don't know. We appreciate you a gosh damn lot for coming on today and just chatting with us. We're just all wrestling fans, and we just wanted to have a nice chat. Kevin, have you got anything you want to say to Chris before we end it out?
Just thank you so much for coming on. I'm a big fan of your work. I'm going to be a big fan of your work for years to come, hopefully. I just want to keep seeing you do great things. Just thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, well, thank you guys. I can't thank anyone enough for just clicking on my videos and watching and being along this journey with me. My goal is to get to 1 million subscribers in the next 4 years, and I think that we can do it.
Yeah, well, I think you'll get there, Chris. You're certainly on your way there. I guess the last question I have for you is, you want to get to 1 million subscribers, but what is the end goal? Is there an end goal, or are you just kind of taking everything as it comes?
For me, it's just always been about like being excited to, go to work or do what I'm doing every single morning, and then to be proud of what I've accomplished at the end of the day. And, for me, it's not about having a certain number of subscribers or being on a certain TV network or working for a certain wrestling company or whatever. If any of that stuff happens, that's great. That's awesome. But I want it to always be motivating me and driving me every day. I want to constantly be getting better and better every single day and pushing myself. So that's it for me. Yeah.
Well, that's a good outlook to have. Even for us, which is a much smaller scale, but I've always said this, and I've always said to Kevin, if I'm not having fun doing this, I don't really want to do it anymore. So as long as I'm watching wrestling, having fun, and chatting about wrestling with people like you, Chris, and whoever, I'm happy doing what I'm doing.
You guys are doing it right then.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very, 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 very much, Chris, for coming on. Everyone go check out Chris's stuff. We'll have all your links in the description and stuff like that. And let's do this again soon, Chris.
Let's do it. So Josh, Kevin, thank you guys so much for having me on. You're awesome. Keep up the great work. And let's chat again soon.
Thank you very much, Chris. All right. Peace out, everyone.
What's happening, wrestling fans? This is Conrad Cushman from the Everything Pro Wrestling Podcast. And right now, you're listening to Wrestling Reverb Podcast on Brainbusta Radio.
I want to say a big, huge thank you to Chris Van Vliet for coming on today and just chatting with me and Kevin, because, I mean, as you heard in that interview, me and Kev had a wonderful time. Kevin, you can back that up.
Oh, absolutely. That was an absolute blast. Just absolutely twice. I'm so lost for words at how good that interview was.
It was just that's what I wanted exactly from that interview, I just wanted to chat about wrestling, pick his brain, because he's a very just passionate wrestling fan. So it was just really fun. Again, thank you to Chris, and make sure everyone please go and follow him on Twitter. He's everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You know who he is at this point. You should definitely go and check out his stuff. Kevin, it feels like having that conversation and just kind of chatting with Chris. I don't know about you, but it just kind of, I don't know. I think we talked about in this chat with Chris as well, just kind of the, staleness that there is with especially WWE's content, and when you get in a lull, and obviously that's going to affect at least my approach into Reverb in the fact of, listen, I don't want to be talking about just sourness towards the product on the show all the time. I just don't want to do that. It's very mind-numbing, but I don't know, this kind of made me have a little, I said this to you in the pre-chat, Kevin. It made me feel
like a little bit better.
Yeah, because everyone that's seen me on Twitter lately has seen that I've been, what would be the word? What would be the way you would describe what I've been saying on Twitter? I don't even know how to. It's not ranting. I'm not ranting.
But you're hurting for better wrestling.
Yeah, I am. It upsets me because I love this so much. Everyone knows how much we love wrestling, and we just want the best. And I guess, I don't know, this chat just made me look at it with different eyes. And he's saying even from someone that was at WrestleMania, he can see that there's something missing. And that's important. It just made me go, okay, let's just take a chill pill, breathe, and just try and get back in that mentality of what I've always said to you, Kevin, and you've always kind of echoed it, is just enjoying the journey.
Yes. Got to enjoy the ride. Life's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, I agree. Again, a wonderful chat. We hope to do that again soon. We hope to really, in however many episodes of this show there has been, that was really mine and Kevin's first real quote-unquote interview, I guess. We've never really had anyone. We've had fellow podcasters on and stuff like that, but never anyone of his kind of
stature.
Yeah, his kind of stature. And
a 4-time Emmy Award winner.
I know, he's a big deal, everyone. But yeah, it was just, I've always wanted to do stuff like this, but it's just finding the right people. I never want to go into the mentality of the interview. I want to just chat with interview elements, of course.
Absolutely. I get you 100%. And that's what we did there. We took it in the right direction. We didn't make it so stop and start with questions and answers. We had it free-flowing, free verse, free form, whatever you want to call it. It was just really, really good. It was a good chat.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Alrighty, that'll do us for this week on Wrestling Reverb. Make sure to subscribe to not only Wrestling Reverb's feed, but of course Brainbusta Radio's feed as well. And also, this is the first time I've actually recorded since Diving In came out. For anyone that checked out Diving In this week, and I've received a lot of feedback on it, and I wasn't expecting as much outpour of support for a show like this. So I do thank everybody for checking it out. I really, really, really do. If anyone doesn't know, or just search Diving In with Josh on your favorite podcasting platform and you'll find it. Every Tuesday, a new episode will come out. And this week was with our Brainbuster father, Wilfred, and it was our dad. It was a very honest chat of our opinion and our experience living in the world we live in now. But yeah, thank you everyone for checking out Diving In. Kevin, you'll be on Diving In at some point, somewhere down the line.
Yes. Don't worry, Reverb fans. I will be on the show at some point, and it's going to be glorious.
Oh, glorious. Alrighty. But yes, thank you everyone for checking out Diving In and for checking out Reverb in general, because I love you all. And I want to apologize for my terrible American accent before.
It wasn't that bad. I think my Aussie accent was worse.
So you say Aussie too, it's Aussie.
Aussie.
That's better.
Sounds like Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, think of it like that. See, you Americans butchering our stuff again. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, thank you everyone. What an outro. That's one way to end it. Just me being angry at America. Sorry. Alrighty. Peace out everyone. We'll see you next week on Wrestling Reverb.
Bye bye.